This is my house, and over the years I have not done a single deep energy retrofit, but I have played the long game with many shallow ones that I could afford at the time. This is a narrow lot, 25 foot wide, houses very close together. It's a 2.5-story duplex. It's an old house in an old neighborhood. And what does that mean? Poor insulation and leaky. Lots of holes and cracks for cold air to come into. In a cold climate like this, most people want to insulate their house. It's a good idea. But first, hat and shoes. What is that? Hat? That's the attic. That's where the warm air has rose up to the top and is escaping. So you have to seal that. Seal it with a good vapor barrier and some insulation. Then, the shoes. That's the foundation. That's where the cold air is coming in to replace the air that's been escaping outside. So first you do the hat, then you do the shoes, then you can do the insulation of the walls. You see, these two foundations, they used to be the same. This house has a stone foundation just like this one. But what I did is I dug down, put a vapor barrier against the foundation, caulked it to the side here, caulked it to the bottom, then put insulation all the way up, backfilled it, and covered it with stucco. So I'm left with something that looks like this. After you've done that, and you've basically broken the thermal bridge that basically freezes your foundation, so that cold is no longer coming in, then you can do the insulation of the walls. So just like this house is shiplap, old wood, 110 years old, that's what's underneath here, but I've added styrofoam and steel siding. So then you have a warm house. So I don't have any photos of insulating the house because that was done a long time ago. But here upstairs, you can see the thickness of the windowsill here. This part here is thicker than it needs to be. And yet the wall, the tamarack siding is right there. So hidden inside there is 2 inches of styrofoam insulation. Being someone who likes data, I've kept track of the natural gas that I've used in my house pretty well ever since I bought the house. So over the course of all these little retrofits. So from a starting place of about 5,000 cubic meters in 1990, we can see the effect of the hat and the shoes, but it's unclear. The overall energy usage is more dominated by cold and warm winters and by the occupants who keep the thermostat higher or lower. So it wasn't until 2005, which is the first year that the wall insulation and the siding was on. That variation stopped, and I could see clearly a 45% drop in national gas consumption. But as you can see here, the gas really stopped in 2015. That's when I cut the cord on fossil fuel heating and canceled my natural gas hookup. I converted the house to electric baseboard heating and put a wood stove in my living room. This is my carbon footprint before doing any retrofits in my house, about 12 tons of CO2. By reducing my heating requirements through these tiny retrofits, I could cut the gas off, and now my entire lifestyle produces about 4.25 tons. That's a 64% reduction. Which has really changed for me after this, and for the better. It is really so nice to cozy up to a fire every day in our excessively long winters. The wood stove setup is interesting in 2 ways. One is I burn scrap wood that normally would be going to the landfill, so I get some serious points for that. That means I scout with my trusty battery skill saw and cut broken pallets and bring them home. No garbage trucks are now hauling these to uncertain future at the landfill, possibly making methane. The other thing is that I am of the burn it fast and hot school. Why? Best combustion. The most efficient conversion of wood to heat is by burning it hot. A slow burn produces creosote and VOCs that all your neighbors can smell. That's no good. So I burn it hot. The trouble with burning it hot is you can produce more heat than your room can handle at that time. I solved this problem by installing a heatsink behind the stove. These are slabs of concrete that I poured and mounted on the wall. They are 2 inches thick and together make about 1,500 pounds of mass. They can absorb about 5,000 watts of heat if they go from 20 degrees to 40 degrees Celsius. That's like a hairdryer being left on for 5 hours. That heat is slowly released after the fire has gone out. As good and wet as this water looks, it didn't arrive until September, long after the gardens needed it. What did I do all summer? All dry summer? I saved dishwater and I carried it out in a bucket. So that worked between that and some thick mulch on the soil right between the rows. Carrying water out several times a day sometimes. Kept it all going.
So we're taking out the compost. And, if you were a little microbe or a worm, wouldn't you think that's a delicious looking smorgasbord? Okay, well, here we are. This is the compost bins. As you can see, there we go, 1, 2, 3. The first one, labeled new compost with the hockey stick, is got things that are just beginning. So we'll dump that in there. And the way this 3-compartment system works is you fill one, and then once it's full, then you begin to flip it. And so here, this one has been started already and been flipped several times. It's still pretty warm. So then this one gets flipped from here to there, spends a week, then back again. These boards here you can move up and down. So see, they fit nicely in each system there. So that way you can make compost by flipping it regularly, like once a week, in about 6 weeks or so, instead of waiting for a couple years. Okay, back we go to the house. Yeah, everyone's gonna be happy with that compost. So hi, welcome to my kitchen. It's a pretty regular kitchen, like many other kitchens I imagine, with a few differences. This is my bag drying rack. I dry plastic bags that I probably will use again. So for the most part that's Ziploc bags, and I wash them in the sink and hang them on this rack and put them by the window, and they dry out, fold them up, and I use them again. But actually there's something else. I've started to wash all of my plastic film and dry it. Not to reuse it again, but to just keep it. So that's this miscellaneous film. And that's kind of for just scientific reasons. I want to weigh it and see how much plastic I accumulate. We might use it for experiments at CF at some point, we'll see. Because if you burn all your paper that you can burn and cardboard that you can burn in your little stove, if you take out your compost, then if you can find something to do with your glass, which I'm working on, you're left with not a lot of other things. Some metal and mostly plastic. So garbage ends up being mostly plastic. And now that I've started doing this, I'm just basically keeping that too. So the garbage I throw out is very minimal. But so I get random plastic bags, which I do have to sort out, and yeah, I'll keep some of these and keep some of these, and this is not keeping. And what do you do with a coffee bag? I haven't figured it out yet. So this is a mixture of waste, true waste plastic, and some reusable plastic bags. So I've kept my plastic film for a year now. I've kept hard plastic for a year. I've got like 2.5 kilos of plastic film and about the same of hard plastic. What did I learn out of all this? Well, it's a bother keeping your plastic. You're surrounded by it. You're always washing it and drying it and keeping it. But taking responsibility for it, if that's taking responsibility, makes you bring less home. Things like this, which when you're in the grocery store looks very handy, becomes a burden, just as all these other packages, if you have to keep them around, kind of like the planet has to keep them around, they're a burden. So I'd say that's the best lesson that I've learned is it's kind of like sharing the burden, or seeing like, oh, Mother Nature has to carry this stuff around. So empathy, I guess. And so you just end up using less, not taking that bag, remembering to bring your grocery bags with you when you go to the grocery store. Even like bringing like extra bags to put apples and fruit and stuff in. So, because who needs all these plastic bags? It wasn't very long ago when we didn't have any of them and we did just fine. So we could go back there. So of the things that I would still like to do here, this is one. This will be for grey water, and there will be a tiny treatment center. So what I'm going to do is put these old PVC tubes, pipe, and stack one on top of the other, and fill them with glass, broken glass, and basically have a little pump system. So the pump will take the water, dishwater, and trickle it, pump it up, trickle it down through all the broken glass. So basically a trickle filter. You could use sand or gravel for the same thing, but why not broken glass? And so that way I would be cleaning on a regular basis grey water before I put it in the garden, just to get the soap out. I'm not sure what the chemical test would be for efficacy, like when is all the soap out. I'm not sure the soap does harm to your soil microorganisms, but I imagine it doesn't help. Other things I'd like to do would be on this side. I would like to do a survey, inventory of insects, and do a comparison between the insects that visit here or live here, reproduce here, use this biomass, compared to a normal lawn. What does that look like? What's the mass basis? How many grams of insects call this home versus a normal lawn? That would be very interesting to me. One more thing, talking about biomass, how much biomass is created here, and how much of that is sequestered. And to do that, you'd have to do like a pretty intensive survey of harvesting, square meters, and how much carbon is there in the overstory, like in the above ground and below ground, and of what's in below ground, how much has been incorporated into the soil matrix. And that also would be interesting to compare with a normal lawn, because this, like 6 years ago was a normal lawn, and this is what we have here. So those are two things I would like to do.